This is exactly 6:15. Welcome to the news with me, Kejang Henry, at our headlines. Thousands of students of the English subsystem of education have begun the written phase of the General Certificate of Education for GC Ordinary and Advanced levels. Despite the euphoria and anxiety that characterized the first day of the examination, a candidate is known to have refused entry by the Superintendent of Government Bilingual High School Daidu for arriving 5 minutes late, despite the rule allowing up to 15 minutes of lateness. Meanwhile, Secondary Education Minister Nalova Lyonga has frowned on centers with unhygienic environment, warning them to sit up or lose their accommodation center hosting rights. And violence rips across Bamenda and Batibu in the northwest region of Cameroon, leaving several deaths, with separate incidents involving armed attacks and brutal domestic homicides. Stay tuned for the 6:15 news in a jiffy. Thanks and welcome back. You can check us on our respective platforms on Canal International. Have begun the written phase of the GC Ordinary and Advanced level. And despite the euphoria that characterized the first day of the examination, an advanced level candidate was refused entry by the Superintendent of Government Bilingual High School Daidu in Douala. The superintendent's decision to deny entry to a candidate who arrived 5 minutes late, despite the rule allowing for up to 15 minutes, has been described as unjust, unfair, overzealous, arbitrary, and lack of compassion. Maureen D was at the examinations center this morning and report.
Je suis candidat à l'examen GC Advanced Level. Je suis venu au lycée de Daido à 8h moins. Je me suis rendu au portail principal. On m'a demandé d'aller au portail secondaire qui se trouve derrière le lycée.
He arrived his examination center late at past 8 a.m. and could not be allowed to take the exams.
Le temps de fouille, le temps ne fait que passer. Le temps qu'on me fouille, etc. Puis le censeur, je ne sais pas, celui en charge, le chargé de mission, il vient, il me demande de me mettre dehors. Pourtant, normalement, c'est 15 minutes maximum. 15 minutes ou 20 minutes qu'on peut demander à un candidat de se mettre dehors et de ne pas composer.
The candidate contended that he believes there was a 15 minutes grace period allowing entry onto 8:15 a.m.
One candidate came, things have changed, no more 15 minutes late to be allowed to enter the hall. Now any students who come after 8 o'clock, the start time is not allowed to enter the hall.
However, the chief of center and the superintendent enforced the rules strictly, citing examination regulations that prohibiting admitting candidates minutes after the exams has begun. At Government Bilingual High School Bepanda, another examination center, a similar atmosphere prevailed, with officials emphasizing the importance of punctuality. Chief of centers have urged all candidates to arrive on time to ensure a smooth examination process.
For the past 5 years, the GC board has put in place what is called the catchment center to enable, is one of the means to curb fraud during the exams.
The GC examination span 19 weeks, providing candidates ample time to demonstrate their mastery of subjects and prepare for future academic pursuits.
Well, thanks very much, Maureen D. Elangwe Wasenaje is the Chief of Center of Government Bilingual High School Daidu. One of the catchment centers, accommodation centers, one of the biggest, of course, in the littoral region. She outlined strict measures put in place by the General Certificate of Education Board to curb examination fraud. She spoke to Maureen D.
We have been having meetings with the students giving them the importance of staying away from fraud. And in the center, when they come in, serious checks are done on the candidates. They have the habit of wearing pants and putting pre-prepared materials, so we control all that before they go into the hall. Before entering the hall again, the invigilators do everything to check them. And during when the exams are going on, while the students are writing, it is the role of the invigilator to ensure that there is no fraud, there is no cheating, there is no group work. For the past 5 years, the GC board has put in place what is called the catchment center to enable, it's one of the means to curb fraud during the exams, so that the superintendents go to the catchment center only say 30 minutes before the commencement of the exams to collect the question papers. That way, they are hurrying to their centers and they will not have time to open the question papers and share it to their students that they have already planned to share it with. So that is one of the measures that the GC board has taken. And for that reason, I think they are doing a commendable job and we are happy about it. The second aspect is that from the centers, once the students finish writing, the secretarial work is done, the question papers are taken, exams are secured.
What high school they do. Meanwhile, secondary education with nasty environment center. Now, visiting some of these environments. So despite a satisfactory debut, Hyacinth Chair was with her.
4 writing centers visited in the capital city this June 3rd, Serene, here at the Setingwaikele Center, same at the government bilingual technical high school called Bison and others. The invigilators concentrated as the Minister of Secondary Education, Nalova Lyonga, moves around the schools to supervise the exercise.
The exam started on getting the children into the classroom, where I have asked about latecomers. So from that perspective, it is quite good.
She, however, frowns at centers with hitches, especially those with nasty environments that can affect the health of the candidates.
But I think there's something that has to be done. Same students, similarly, they should improve. So there should be permanent cleaners for the toilets, so the hygiene should be improved upon.
They are discussing after the first paper, sharing their thought, most of them expressing optimism after a good start, while others remain skeptical as the questions did not fully meet their expectations.
Thanks very much. And Bamenda, with several incidents occurring, armed attacks and brutal domestic homicides. Sherifa Saleh reports with calls from our Northwest Chief Correspondent, Annie Collins.
It was Bamenda. Gunmen are reported to have opened fire on a recreational snack at Mile 4 on Sunday evening, where one person died. Still in Quen, a bike rider was reportedly shot dead by some gunmen after he refused to let them seize his bike in the evening hours of the same Sunday. Over in Bamenda 2 in Mancon, along the road linking Sonak Street to Ntakmulung quarters. Meanwhile, in Batibo, a man is said to have butchered the wife to death, abandoning the corpse on the farm. Family members and neighbors carried out local preliminary investigations after noticing the victim's absence. The husband, whom the local findings proved to be behind the disappearance, led a delegation of villagers to the farm where he had effectively administered deadly machete blows on the back part of the head, killing her on the spot. He was forced to single-handedly bundle up and carry the corpse of the wife with whom they had entertained a dispute over money from a funeral procession to accompany the mortal remains to the Batibo District Hospital mortuary.
Suspected counterfeit currency network. 3 individuals were arrested in possession of about 8.6 million francs CFA. Sherifa Saleh once more report on demand.
Displaying the seized counterfeit notes, authorities revealed that the suspects operated from a private residence in the Cité de Palmiers neighborhood. The fake 5,000 and 10,000 franc CFA notes were concealed within sanitary towels. Additionally, 3 mobile phones, equipment used for reproducing the banknotes, and substances suspected to be used by hypnotizing passengers in public transport were confiscated.
Des investigations menées d'abord par le commandant de compagnie qui a eu à saisir une grosse somme de faux billets.
This operation responds to numerous complaints from residents about the circulation of fake money in the city. Just days prior, the Nilong Gendarmerie Brigade intercepted counterfeit euros hidden in the luggage of a woman arriving from France. These actions are part of a strategy commanding the Littoral Gendarmerie Legion, aiming to combat counterfeit currency and organized crime in the littoral region.
Nous avons trafic des faux billets, mais aussi c'est pour des produits inoptisants afin de pouvoir captiver des personnalités dans les taxis.
Authorities urge the public to remain vigilant and report any suspicious activities to help curb the spread of counterfeit money, which poses a significant threat to the economy and public trust.
And 2 Cameroonian assistant truck drivers who were detained in Central African Republic for unclear circumstances have been released. Of course, the release was secured thanks to a diplomatic mission organized by the Bureau of Land and Freight Transport. Ambo Gladys.
There were scenes of joy and relief in Garabulai as 2 young Cameroonian assistant drivers returned home after spending several weeks in detention in Bangui, the capital of the Central African Republic. The pair were reportedly arrested in mysterious circumstances after an encounter with suspected traffickers. They came to us asking for help to get to Cameroon. We thought it was a joke, but the next day they returned with police officers and we were arrested. News of their detention quickly reached Cameroon's Bureau for the Management of Road Freight, known as the BGFT. The General Coordinator Alhaji Musa immediately initiated diplomatic channels to seek their release. Legal channel available.
Pour que les enfants soient libérés.
Their release comes as a significant members, union leaders and fellow drivers welcome the apprentices home with applause and warm embraces. Their release is a direct result of the while the release has been hailed as a diplomatic operating beyond national borders.
The country, while the Minister of Transport, the transport sector thinks that people in taxis. Details with Beatrice Ngamo from Yaoundé.
They initiate taxi drivers like passengers. Strengthening security measure in the sector becomes a priority.
Your driver, but the badge is to the passengers. These to drive that vehicle, so they can confide, they can trust in you, feeling secure.
Though the response to the initiative is great online, nevertheless, not all transport professionals are on board. They feel kind of abandoned by the powers that be, especially with their situations.
Les problèmes que nous avons, ils n'ont rien fait. Et tout récemment, on a tué beaucoup de nos collègues. L'État n'a rien fait.
While the ministry claims to have involved unions in the process, like drivers, some are not really satisfied, as they are being tortured by their fellow drivers under the cover union.
Date pour qu'on puisse se réunir, pour qu'on nous présente l'échantillon et qu'on l'adopte ensemble.
Adhesion to unions is not an obligation other holds, so the badge should not be compulsory.
On n'est pas obligé de nous imposer le badge.
These issues notwithstanding, most people welcome the new identification badges for taxi
move, and of course they justify this through complaints of awareness and the financial means or constraints that will not permit them to immediately acquire the new identification badges. Maureen.
Inside this aging taxi, the driver navigates Douala's congested roads without the newly mandated identification badge. Despite the June 2 deadline set by the Ministry of Transport, compliance remains low. I started working at 9 a.m. and there has been no controls. I haven't been checked or stopped by anyone since morning. Nobody has questioned or intercepted me. Union leaders expressed frustration over the lack of enforcement and public awareness campaigns. They argued that without proper identification, distinguishing between legitimate and illegal operators becomes challenging, potentially compromising passenger safety. Others have expressed concerns that the absence of proper safety. There are procedures 3 days. We also have a trade union that should be involved. They argue that without proper identification, it becomes challenging to distinguish between legitimate drivers and those operating illegally, potentially endangering passengers. The Ministry of Transport has yet to implement measures, leaving the effectiveness of the regulation in question. The regulation introduced by the Ministry of Transport mandates that all urban, peri-urban and rural taxi drivers in Cameroon wear identification badges. These measures aims to enhance security and professionalism within the transport sector. However, the lack of enforcement and awareness has hindered